I beat all 3 of the EXO challenges without even moving. I have truly transcended beyond the limits of this game. I don't even have to move to beat missions. Here's how I did it. So as most of you are probably aware, I recently beat Presage without jumping, so I wanted another challenge, hence why I attempted to beat these 3 missions without moving. Now what exactly counts as movement? Well, if we look up the definition of movement on Google, we get an act of moving. Okay, if we look up the definition of moving, we get an act of motion, and if we look up motion, Google gives us the definition of the action or process of moving or being moved. Thanks Google, very helpful. For the purposes of this video, I'm pretty much counting movement as pressing any of the directional keys on my keyboard, those being W, A, S, and D. This means I'll still be allowing jumping, abilities, and any animation that pulls you forward, such as a sword swing. But with that being said, let's get on with the first challenge. Upon loading into this first challenge, I planned to use Icarus Dash on Top Tree Dawnblade to traverse the area. Only issue with this was that my Icarus Dash had other plans. Apparently if you aren't holding a direction when you activate the dash, you dash backwards. Interesting. I made my way over to the first platform while utilising this dash. Now if you've played the Agility EXO challenge before, you know there's a mechanic where the platforms disappear and reappear. Since movement is very limited, this presented a very difficult situation to work around. To combat this, I used the Wings of Sacred Dawn to jump up and glide every time the platform disappeared. Doing this, I was easily able to make it up the 4 platforms to the portal. After going through, I cleared the ads with my scout rifle and shot the cubes to bring down the barrier. Not too much out of the ordinary here. Next was some more platforms. I applied the exact same strategy as before, using my sword and dashes to traverse down to the little area with the harpies. Again, I jumped up whenever the floor below me disappeared. After this bit, I got to the next set of platforms. Now, there's something a little different about these platforms. They disappear in cycles of 2 rather than 3. This means that I had to float in the air at every platform individually. The jumps between these areas were actually further as well, so this took a couple of tries. Sword ammo was required to make these jumps because I used a combination of sword swings to line myself up with the platform, followed by an Icarus Dash or 2 to make the jump. Backwards. Pretty interesting movement to watch, especially if you do this in a public mission. Oh no, I'm just imagining that. That's going to look very strange. And that's why I record these videos for solo activities. Next was the tool room. But to get into it, I had to cross this very long and slightly intimidating disappearing bridge. The issue with this was that I wasn't nearly fast enough to cross it, while, you know, not moving. As an alternative, I dropped down onto some ledges below it, which gave me false hope because they're completely and utterly useless. I eventually found out that I could use the exact same strategy for the bridge as I did for the platforms earlier. Oh, and instead of crossing the gap to the other side like a normal person, I did some parkour off the little chest-looking things to get above the bridge. I traversed backwards up this room and onto some more platforms, which, unlike the previous ones, did not disappear, which was kind of nice. After going through the portal at the top, I was at the boss encounter. When theory crafting this run for the first time, I had no sword ammo at this point, which made the small jumps to the various steps in the room a lot harder than they would have been otherwise. It didn't matter though, because I could switch to a helmet with sword ammo finder, and having ammo was almost guaranteed at this point. As you can see from the gameplay, a scout rifle came in very handy here because I could pick off all the enemies without even attempting the first jump. To bring down the shield at the start of the boss fight, you have to do one full circuit of the room and then shoot down some cubes. None of this was very difficult. Then came the boss. Well, that was a hard boss fight. This EXO challenge is more focused around combat, which, fun fact, is pretty difficult when you're unable to move. The main threat is the wyverns, which, even in the best of situations, can melt you pretty much instantly. Using a sniper, I was able to take them out from a distance. I also found out at this point that the Vex cubes are actually used for stunning the Vex, which is a very obvious mechanic which I never really knew about previously. I mean, it's not like the game tells you. Never mind then. After clearing the waves on both sides, it was then time for the boss. Problem: upon spawning, the boss also spawns like 5 wyverns, which, as previously discussed, can obliterate you in seconds. After quite a few attempts, I managed to beat this exo challenge by destroying the Vex cubes and damaging the boss while it was stunned. It's a pretty quick and simple mission in theory, but very difficult in practice. Would not recommend. I'm just going to say this straight away, this is definitely the most painful of the 3. Not only do you have to manage the biting cold debuff, you also have to make some of the hardest jumps in all of the game, even while able to move. To start off, I just used my Icarus dash to traverse the first area. It came a little close with the biting cold debuff, but for the most part it was pretty much okay. The next few jumps took me a very long time, and this was the one that I had taken a quick look at 3 weeks prior to this to see if this video idea was a good thing to do. So yeah, not very easy jumps. The main issue is, unlike other similar missions, you don't get any heavy ammo upon loading in. Without a sword swing, it was very difficult to line myself up backwards with the platform, and know when to stop gliding. I found that switching to Wings of Sacred Dawn for this section just created more problems than it solved, namely the fact that I would always overshoot the platforms and ending up falling to my death. Additionally, I also had to deal with biting cold, which apparently doesn't instantly kill you like the one in Deepstone Crypt. In fact, it takes rather a long time. And I have a healing rift. Anyways, I made the first 2 jumps and skipped the third one with the Wings of Sacred Dawn. Now, to deal with the gauntlet of enemies leading up to the next few platforms. Good news, I could get heavy ammo here. Bad news, if you die on the jumping puzzle, or to the enemies, the game will reset you all the way back to the fireplace and respawn the enemies. Luckily though, due to my practice with the other 2 exo challenges, I was able to make this set of jumps first try. After getting to the next fireplace, I crossed some floating stones backwards and climbed up some towers to get all the way to this very large gap here. Now I didn't really want to risk getting a checkpoint down at the fireplace below here, so I attempted to cross the gap using just Icarus Dash and Wings of Sacred Dawn. Then I simply hopped onto the rock and jumped up to the next platform. Now since we skipped the checkpoint, oh by the way, this flinching you're seeing me do right now, that's because I'm currently freezing to death. Ignore that. Since we skipped the previous checkpoint, the distance I had to travel with the biting cold was much further than it would be in a normal playthrough. Unlike previous sections, here the cold was actually a threat and I had to use my healing rift very sparingly. This was due to the combination of enemies, the distance I needed to travel, and of course, the fact that I'm rejecting the arrow keys and not properly moving. For some reason. Why am I making this video again? The boss, probably the hardest standalone boss out of these 3 challenges, not counting the wyverns in the second one. Also, one thing that I will never understand about Hydra bosses is their stomp mechanic. Like, how on earth do they stomp? They are literally floating in the air. Fortunately, I was able to kill the boss pretty quickly with Falling Guillotine after I had gathered enough ammo. Then it was just a matter of opening the chest, which, I won't lie, I kind of struggled with for some reason. That is all 3 exo challenges without jumping. This challenge wasn't nearly as fun as Presage without jumping, but that's probably because I picked a much better mission last time. Plus, the puzzle solving aspect of not jumping presented many more interesting challenges to work around. I might end up making a video or 2 on the new Expunge mission that came out recently, but it's not really very difficult, which means it's not nearly as fun as something like Harbinger or Presage. More in line with these exo challenges in terms of difficulty. Let me know in the comments what other challenges or videos you'd like to see next. Feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.